Having worked with a lot of CEOs, I know that many CEOs see themselves more as doers than thinkers. And sometimes strategy can appear to be something that is not very action-oriented, that is somewhere out in the future, not something that I'm doing right now, and it just does not get enough of their attention. Welcome back to Agile Growth with Shri, the place where CEOs and entrepreneurs and business owners find actionable ideas to grow their business. This is the second of my 6-part series on the 5 biggest mistakes that CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners make when it comes to strategy. In this video, I'll do 3 things. First, I'll talk about the big mistake that I notice quite often. The second thing I'll do is go into a little bit about why does this happen? Why do CEOs make this mistake? And the third thing I'm going to do is give you some ideas on how you can fix this. The first big mistake is not having a strategy. So you might be thinking, come on, you got to be kidding me. How could somebody possibly lead a company without a strategy? Surely this never happens. I would say, please bear with me and let me share what I've noticed, and then you can decide if this occurs or not. When I work with CEOs and senior teams, I am really curious to know about their strategy. I ask them, what is your strategy? What does strategy mean to you? And then I also ask them, what do you need to do to improve your strategy? As I listen to the responses from the CEO, from the CFO, from the head of sales, from the head of engineering, from the head of production, operations, whatever it is, all these different leaders, I'm really paying attention to, do they all have a common understanding of what strategy means? And also, do they all have the same definition of strategy for their company? And what I notice is usually the answers are a little bit all over the place. They aren't all aligned. And in many cases, the leaders themselves will admit that actually, the more we think about it, we don't really have a strategy. These questions have really kind of made us think about it. In my last video, I shared a simple yet powerful definition of strategy coined by Michael Porter. And Michael Porter says, strategy is the creation of a unique and valuable position involving a different set of activities. When we are only focused on what we need to do this month or this quarter or even this year, that is more a tactical approach, more focused on execution rather than on strategy. When I am talking about strategy, I want you to think on a different time horizon than a month, a quarter, or a year. Because a very important strategy is a time horizon that you're dealing with. Strategy should be medium to long term being 3 to 5 years, long term being 10 years or more. So I've kind of talked a little bit about what is a mistake. Now let's talk a little bit about why does this happen. There are 3 big reasons why companies will not have a strategy. The first reason companies don't have a strategy is because they don't understand what strategy is. They think that strategy is a vision with some lofty words which are meant to be inspirational. Or they think that strategy is a very detailed plan. Or the strategy is a revenue goal. Or they define strategy as being best practices. Now each of these things are key components, but each of them by themselves is not a strategy. So because they don't understand what strategy is, they're not able to develop an effective strategy. The second reason this happens that companies don't have a strategy is because they're too short-term focused. Many CEOs find themselves in a position wherein they're overly focused on short-term execution. They think that they're in a do-or-die situation and they see it as all about survival. And in some cases that might be true, but they're sometimes operating with that mindset at all times. Now, they also believe that they cannot afford to think about long-term or even medium-term time horizons, that they have to be focused on the immediate stuff. And they believe that strategy is some kind of a luxury that is available only to large, well-established companies, and it doesn't apply to them. The third reason CEOs fail to develop an effective strategy is that they're too caught up in action. Having worked with a lot of CEOs, I know that many CEOs see themselves more as doers than thinkers. And sometimes strategy can appear to be something that is not very action-oriented, that is somewhere out in the future, not something that I'm doing right now, and it just does not get enough of their attention. So we've talked about what is a big mistake. We've talked about what are some reasons that drives that kind of an outcome. Now let's talk about what are some action steps that you can take to fix this mistake. The first step I would suggest to you is use a 3 to 5 year time horizon and answer the following questions. What is our winning aspiration? Where do we play and how will we win? Now assess Based on the answers that you get to those questions, assess whether you have a strategy that really differentiates you in the marketplace that you're playing in, and if it is a source of competitive advantage. If you find that you're dissatisfied with your answers, you probably need to start working on developing a good strategy. The second step I would recommend is start reading up about strategy, start learning more about strategy. If you're looking for a starting point, in my last video, I talked about Harvard Business Review article called What is Strategy by Michael Porter. That's a fantastic read. I would strongly recommend it. Another resource I want to offer to you is this book, Playing to Win by A.G. Lafley and Roger Martin. Now, A.G. Lafley was a chairman and CEO of Procter & Gamble, had tremendous success. You're learning from a very successful CEO, an actual operator. Roger Martin is now the dean of the Rotman School of Business in Toronto. But before he was doing that, he was a consultant with the Monitor Group, which is actually started by Michael Porter. And they've done a fantastic job of describing what strategy is and what are some steps that you can take to actually build a strategy for your company. The other general recommendation when it comes to strategy that I would offer to you is set aside time to do it on a regular basis. At a minimum, you need to get together with your team on a quarterly basis and review your strategy. And ideally, you should be doing it at least on a monthly basis. Getting into the habit of looking at it frequently is the key to developing a really good strategy. The first time you do it, you may not develop a great strategy, but practice is what makes you better. So stick with it, and that's my recommendation for you. Thanks for watching. Please leave any questions or feedback for me in the comment section. Check out the next video in the series, which will talk about the next mistake, which is believing that your focus on your operational efficiency is your strategy. See you next time.